So we have this kind of wonderful thing in an imaginary world. In an imaginary world, liberals and conservatives should be able to talk. We used to be able to talk. We really did. It is true. I mean, I went through times that were far worse than this, far more divisive than this, when leaders were being killed, when universities were on fire. But I've also lived through times when we could talk. We could sit down and say, hey, the liberals would say, yes, yes, I love America, but here are people who are not being served. And conservatives would push back and say, well, if you change this, this will go wrong, because conservatives can trace the dots of any change to the apocalypse. But ultimately, with arguing, with yelling at one another, we could, in a civilized way, go forward. Why can't that happen now? And you know what I think. You know what I believe. I believe it has a lot to do with the media. We're talking about I'm talking about the media. And I've said this, of course, that I think that the problem we have, the reason we can't talk, is that the media stands between left and right. And it is 8% of the people, the radical left, are running 85% of the media. And by the media, I don't just mean however you're getting your news. I'm talking about Hollywood. I'm talking about, social media. Social media, essentially, I told you, it was amazing to watch social media over this weekend. I think a lot of people just took the weekend off and weren't on it. So the only people who were left were like angry people. I'm outraged. I'm outraged. You go like, what are you outraged? I'm outraged. You would ask me why I'm outraged. I'm outraged because my outrage is so outrageous that I'm outraged. I mean, it was like endless. I started to crack up after a while. I thought this was like kind of funny. The University of Pennsylvania did a study where they came up with this: using less social media than you normally do leads to significant decreases in both depression and loneliness. These effects are particularly pronounced for folks who were more depressed when they came into the study. So in other words, you get more depressed if you use too much social media. Now, I'm always a little leery of studies like this. And I'll tell you why. I'm a little leery of studies like this because in America, we don't believe in limits. Like, it never occurs to anybody saying, yeah, use social media, but don't use it all the time. Don't use it every minute. They do these studies of video games. They'll say, 23 hours of video games a day makes you violent. It's like 23 hours of doing anything a day would make you violent. After a while, you go, I hate doing what I'm doing. I don't do anything else. I mean, it's addiction. It's addiction that makes people crazy. And some of this stuff is addictive. It is built to be addictive. And one of the reasons it's addictive is because it touches off this outrage thing. This outrage thing feels good. Outrage feels good. I always tell you, anger is the devil's cocaine. It feels good. It feels righteous. There is such a thing as righteous anger, but anger is never righteousness itself. And that's what it feels like. It feels like when you're being angry. I mean, even if you're celebrating Veterans Day, you'll hear people say like, well, we celebrate it, but they don't say, I'm outraged. I'm outraged. Some of this stuff that's happening in Florida, this recount stuff, where they're trying to say, oh, Rick Scott didn't win the election, and Andrew Gillum, the guy who lost governor, he conceded, then he took back his concession. They're trying to say, oh, this is ridiculous. This shouldn't be going on. They're recounting it. And of course, some of it is happening in Broward County, which we remember is a place, there's this woman there. Her name is Brenda Snipes. She is in charge of, she's the Broward County Supervisor of Elections. Even the left admits that this woman is an incompetent. During the 2004 presidential election, Snipes blamed the U.S. Postal Service for losing 58,000 absentee ballots, then later announced that only 6,000 ballots had disappeared, and the postal officials said they'd done nothing wrong. She's just, pardon me, she's just on one thing after another. A court ruled that Snipes broke election law when she destroyed ballots from the 2016 election 12 months after the election. Election results of the 2016 primary were posted on the election office's website before the polls closed. She's just at least an incompetent and possibly corrupt. And so Trump complains about this, and he says, they're trying to steal these elections here and in Arizona, where now Sinema, it seems, is the winner of the Senate contest, which is also kind of hard to believe. So Joe Lockhart, a Clinton press secretary, Bill Clinton's press secretary, goes on, and this is what he has to say about Trump challenging these election results.
The really insidious thing, though, is what Trump is doing. He's basically trying to undermine at every turn. It's not just Florida. He weighed in on Arizona. He's weighed in on other races. He's undermining the legitimacy of elections.
Where he doesn't like the results.
Where he doesn't like the results. And that is a hallmark of a failing democracy, of someone moving towards an authoritarian, where he says, fake news. Don't believe what you see. Only believe what I say. That is very troubling. And, you know, as one of my old bosses famously said, the fish rots from the head. And he's providing cover for all of these people to say outrageous things.
The fish rots from the head. I wonder which one of his old bosses, it wouldn't happen to have been Clinton, would it, who suborned perjury, got everybody around him to lie for him. The fish rots from the head. But think about, you know, again, I keep saying that there's no word for absolute obliviousness to your own failings, you know, and then they call it whataboutism. But really, when you're talking about not accepting the results of an election, when all we've heard since Jeff Sessions was fired, all we've heard is, oh my God, they're endangering the sacred Mueller investigation into Trump's insidious Russian collusion that cost, I mean, you know, when Trump complains about possible corruption in Florida, the New York Times, a former newspaper, all of the former news outlets come out and they say, without proof, Trump makes an accusation. Well, where's the proof of Russian collusion? And yet here we've had this 2-year, multi-million-dollar investigation that has dominated the news, that has resulted in people being indicted and convicted for things that had nothing to do with Donald Trump. And now this is the big deal because Trump has fired Sessions, to the point where unbelievably leftists have taken to the street to protest the firing of one of the, what's his name? Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III. They're actually protesting the firing of one of the most conservative people in the government. They should listen to Maureen Dowd. Don't forget to hate all the other conservatives while you're at it. And here he is saying, oh, Donald Trump, this is the sign. This is the sign. When somebody questions the result of an election, that's the sign that the fish is rotting from the head. And, you know, this is all the Democrats have done for the last 2 years, is question the legitimacy, to the point where they are questioning all our institutions. The Senate's no good because it's not representative. The Electoral College is no good because it's not representative. Everything has to change. Everything has to change because they lost. I mean, this is the thing. This is what the media is doing. What our veterans are fought for, and are fighting for, is our right to disagree, our right to argue, the process by which, through arguing, we make decisions together and move on and move forward. This is what we didn't get here through radicalism. We got here through the Constitution. You know, we do need each other. It is this enormous communications industry, not just the news media, Hollywood, the Academy, social media, all of it dominated by 8% of the country. It is this structure that stands like a wall between us. And we need to find a way, without violating the First Amendment, we need to find a way to tear that wall down.